Sorry for the delay. My name is Pratip Banerji. I am a product manager on the Google eBooks team focused on our syndication efforts. And I'm going to be joined by Kevin Landry, who is our tech lead on the Books API team. We're going to be talking to you today about integrating to eBooks, APIs to sell and read eBooks for affiliates, retailers, and device makers. So high level, what are we going to cover today? I'll give you a high level overview of what Google eBooks is. And then I'll dive into some integration details around how affiliates, retailers, and devices use our Books APIs to integrate with us. I'll hand it off to Kevin, who will walk through some of the APIs and go into a little bit of detail around what they are and how they work. And he'll also walk through an eBook integration. And he'll hand it back to me, and I'll walk through an affiliate example integration. So let me start off with a quick video.
The book business hasn't changed very much in the past 500 years. Someone writes a book, someone publishes it, and you buy it and carry it around until you're done reading it. Then, if you're a book lover, you repeat this process for lots and lots and lots of books. But in the past 10 years, a very big change has happened. Books have gone digital. Today, there are all kinds of ebook standards, each with their own dedicated e-reader and their specific place to buy ebooks, and all lacking one thing: choice. The idea behind Google eBooks is to truly set your reading free from all these limitations. Google eBooks stores your library safely in the digital cloud, which means you get to shop for all your favorite books wherever you want, and read them wherever you go, using pretty much any device with an internet connection. Let's say you wake up one morning and decide to read The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. You might begin the story at home, on your laptop, over coffee and a pastry. You'll really be getting hooked on your tablet on the train to work. And by noon, you'll be racing through the chapters on your smartphone when you head out to grab some lunch. Now imagine if you're carrying around not just one book, but a lot of books, like maybe a couple million of them. With Google eBooks, syncing all your books with your devices isn't just simple, it's automatic. You can take a break in the park with some Stevenson, reference your favorite French cookbook at the supermarket, get lost with Grisham on your crosstown bus trip. Whenever you open one of your books, we'll pick up right where you left off. With millions of books to choose from, in every imaginable category, finding what you want to read on Google eBooks is easy. You can check out the New York Times bestseller list, browse the Google eBook store and find recommended titles or free ebooks, discover up-and-coming authors, or buy ebooks from a growing number of independent booksellers and retail partners. Google eBooks is all about choice, from what you want to read, where you want to shop, to how you want to read. That's all your books in one place, no matter where you go. That's truly reading unbound. Start exploring Google eBooks at books.google.com/ebooks.
So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what Google eBooks is about. But just to add to that, our goal was to create an open, cloud-based e-commerce platform that allows for the browsing, buying, storing, and reading of ebooks. We launched the service in December of last year, and one of our guiding principles was we not only wanted to allow our users access to ebooks, we wanted to also support an open ecosystem that lets our partners play and make money in the digital ebook world. So some interesting stats about our service. We have over 5,000 publishers that have made their titles available as Google eBooks, and over 3 million Google eBooks are available, of which hundreds of thousands are available for sale. And we have over 200 retail partners in the US that are selling Google eBooks today. So let's dive into some detail around how these partners integrate with us. So first, who are these different partners? The first set of partners are affiliates. Affiliates are web-based publishers that want to make money by referring their users to Google eBooks and then getting paid a commission when that user buys a book. I expect most people here are probably interested in this affiliate program, since that is the easiest path to integrate with us. The second type of partner we work with are retailers. Retailers are partners that want to tightly integrate with Google eBooks and own the customer experience. So they are taking Google eBooks and selling them to their customers. This is a lot more integration work, but the end result is that they maintain a customer relationship. And the third type of partner that we're talking about are device manufacturers. Device manufacturers are typically hardware vendors that are looking for a way to provide their users access to a rich set of content from Google eBooks. To enable these partners, we've created a set of services and APIs. We use GAN, the Google Affiliate Network, to track when an affiliate sends us a user and pay out commissions. We use all sorts of user authentication protocols like OAuth to ensure that our users have a mechanism to authorize themselves with these third-party services. And we use Books APIs to allow our partners to search within our catalog, as well as allowing our users access to their library within the cloud. In addition to these services and APIs that we've created, we rely on third-party industry standards. We use Onyx for sending catalog information to our retailer partners. We use EPUB and PDF for transmitting files to hardware devices. And we use EditX for communicating transactional information between us and our retail partners. So with that, let's dive into some examples of how each of these partners integrates with us. I'll start with affiliates. So the example here is a financial blog run by Joe. And what Joe wants to do is he wants to provide advice to his users on finances. And every once in a while, when he's providing advice, he refers them to a book. And what he'd like to do when he refers them to a book and this user goes and buys a book, he'd like to make a commission on that purchase. So what Joe does is he first sets up an account with the Google Affiliate Network. And with that account set up, he gets access to a GAN product feed. And what this GAN product feed gives him is a list of all the books that he can refer to Google eBooks. If he doesn't want to use a GAN product feed, because it is a big file that he has to parse, he can use our Books APIs to specifically query Google Books and find out if books are available for sale. And if those books are available for sale, then find out what the referring link for that book should be. So once Joe has this set up, users can come to his site, browse his site, and when they find a book that they're interested in buying, they click on the link for that book, a buy link on Joe's financial blog. And what that link takes them to is the Google Affiliate Network, who tracks that this referral was taken in and refers them on to the Google eBook store. Now this happens completely opaquely to the user. The user doesn't know they're going through GAN. And they can end up either at the front page of the Google eBook store, or they can end up at a specific About the Book page that is tailored for the book that Joe is recommending. So the user can browse the site at that point, do searches, buy the book that they got referred to, or buy another recommended book. And when they find the book they want to purchase, they go through the standard Google checkout process, at which point the book is pushed into the user's library in the cloud. In parallel, after that occurs, Google eBooks sends a message to the Google Affiliate Network saying that that referral that came in resulted in a sale, and then on a monthly basis, the Google Affiliate Network pays out a commission to Joe's financial blog based on the sales that they helped generate. So in summary, what Joe's been able to do is take this blog and monetize it by referring his customers to Google eBooks to buy books that he's recommending. This integration is fairly straightforward. It's probably a couple of days of effort and maybe a couple of days of waiting for all the approvals to go through. But it's not a whole lot of engineering effort. It's not a whole lot of time. The second type of integration I want to walk through is a retailer integration. The example here is you have a print retailer who wants to add ebooks to their set of products that they're selling. So the example, it's a bookstore I made up called Fancy Books. They sell all sorts of fancy books. And the first thing that they do is get an Onyx feed from Google eBooks. This Onyx feed is a very detailed catalog of all the books that are available for sale and a lot of information about those books. So metadata, publisher information, wholesale price, discount codes, et cetera, et cetera. And what it lets Fancy Books do is incorporate the entire Google eBook catalog into their overall catalog, so they can provide their users the ability to search across both sets of data. So that what happens is if the user's looking for a book on wine, they can find print books, they can find ebooks, and they can find books that are available in both formats. And it's one unified search mechanism. The next thing that Fancy Books can do is enable a previewing mechanism. So using our Books API, Fancy Books can give users the option of clicking on a little Google Preview button and reading a small sample of the book to figure out if it's really of interest to them and if it's something that they actually want to buy. Next thing that Fancy Books does is a transaction with the user. In this case, because it's a retailer, the retailer is responsible for doing the transaction, for accepting the credit cards, processing tax, all that stuff. And when that transaction is complete, they send a message to Google eBooks using EditX saying that somebody actually bought a book. And then the user uses OAuth to link their Fancy Books account with their Google eBooks account. And at that point, the book is pushed onto the user's Google eBooks shelf, and the user has the option of reading it on any device that's Google eBooks compatible. And the last thing Fancy Books can do is, after the user's bought the book, they can provide using our APIs, they can provide a mechanism for reading that book on the Fancy Books website. And they can actually access all the books that the user has made available on their library through this interface. So in summary, with this retailer integration, they do control the end-to-end customer experience, the retailer does, but it is a lot more work. The amount of work required is on the order of months, whereas an affiliate integration is on the order of days. The last type of integration I want to walk through is a device integration. So this is a hardware manufacturer that wants to give their users access to Google eBooks. So there are two parallel tracks of integration that we have to think about when we're thinking about a device integration. The first is a buying experience, and the second is a reading experience. On the buying side, the first thing that the user does is accesses a mobile web store using HTTP. They can browse, they can search, they can find books that they're interested in, and once they've found a book they'd like to buy, they go through the standard checkout process using HTTPS. And when that book is bought, it's pushed onto the user's Google library. In parallel, to provide reading, what the device does is it gives the user the option of authenticating, either using client login or OAuth with the Google eBooks service through the device. And then using the Books API, the device is able to download a list of all the contents of that user's library, and information about the books that are in their library. Things like reading position are provided. And then when the user wants to read a book and it's not already on the device, it can be downloaded in EPUB and PDF format. Now, all this happens behind the scenes. The user doesn't see it. The device actually manages that interaction. So with that, I wanted to hand it off to Kevin, who's going to walk through some detail around these APIs.
All right, thanks a lot, Pratip. So when we talk about the APIs, let's talk about what data we're going to be using. So one is volume information. That's basically the book content, right? The metadata, title, author, typical stuff you know. User content. So that's what we store for the user. So a user can go on our site, they can create a review, they can rate a book. They can also create bookshelves. So we have there the My Library bookshelf, so it's My Google eBooks, purchase, review, recently viewed. All those are bookshelves, and you can query those on behalf of the user. The next item is order information. So again, if you're doing that deep type of integration with us, you can do order type of information. That's the EditX feed. And then output format. So output format is JSON, XML, in industry standards. So we have the EditX and Onyx feed that Pratip mentioned. And then also book content. So book content, obviously they're going to read the book. So we do it in PDF and EPUB. And then also we have an embedded viewer. When we get to the embedded viewer, it's actually pretty cool. So you can actually put the viewer right on your web page for certain ebooks. So API technology. So we announced today, yay, the new Books Labs API. So it's a JSON response. The code site is there, so you can go there and read up about the documentation for how to call the API. And we also have the URL there, so that would be the actual prefix you're going to use to actually call the API. In the authentication, so we do support OAuth 2 and OAuth 1, so you can use the OAuth Playground to actually go through and mimic calls on behalf of a user. And we mentioned the industry standard API, so we have the EditX feed and the Onyx feed. So EditX is for inquiries, orders, and the Onyx feed is for, again, product type of metadata information. And then book content. So we talked about the EPUB, PDF, and it is using the Adobe Digital Editions document encryption. And more. So here is the embedded viewer API, which is pretty cool. So you can actually embed the book content. You can, if you look there for the actual JavaScript, there's an ISBN tag there. So you can actually put in an ISBN, put that little viewer right on your web page, and people can actually view that book. So what kind of integration do we have at the ebook level? What are kind of some of the calls people are actually going to be making? So on behalf of a user, we have these calls here. So we have the reading operations. So they typically read either on the HTML side, the JavaScript side, if they're using the JavaScript reader. And then also, they can also read on the devices, right? So we have the Android, iOS, and e-ink devices, where they actually read the PDFs or EPUBs. And then the third type of integration there is the My Library or searching, right? So they can actually talk to our APIs to grab the user's library, or actually make queries directly to us for book content. So they can query off of text, they can query off of the title, the author, and we can go through some of those. What do you need to actually talk to the Google Books API? You need a developer key. So you go to it's similar to the other Google APIs. So you can go to the API console, you can actually register there and just say, I want to use this API, and it gives you a developer key. That developer key you're actually passing in as the key parameter on each of the requests. And there you go, you make the request. And then we have two type of feeds here. So we have the volume information feed. So the volume information feed doesn't require authentication, and that's where you'd be doing the querying metadata, right? So give me the books that are about Mark Twain. Give me the books about whatever. And then we also have the bookshelf query. So this is where you would be querying the user content. This does require authentication. This is where you're going to be doing the OAuth on behalf of the user. And I'll do a demo here. So this is a Chrome extension. How many of you guys have done Chrome extensions before? A couple of you. OK, so I'll show you how easy it is to do a Chrome extension. So the first thing you need is there's a metadata description file that you actually create. It's XML. It's pretty easy. Then you actually have the background page. And the background page stores the content for what you're going to do. So it stores the content across tabs. You have the content script. The content script actually runs within each page that you have. So when you load up a web page, the content script's got to run. And then you have the pop-up. So the pop-up gets run. In this case, when we click on the icon, the pop-up will run and go ahead and make the necessary queries to the background page. What we're doing in this particular example is we're actually going to be using that query there, and we're actually passing in an ISBN. So we're going to look for the ISBNs for a web page, group them all up, make sure they're unique, pass them each to a query to our API, and we're going to return results and then show it on the page. So let's go to the example here. So I am on the San Francisco Public Library, and let's click on New Titles. Oh. Let's try that again. There you go. And New Fiction Titles, and let's click on one of these. And our little extension's running up here. So boom, it popped up a number. What that says is there's actually two ISBNs on this page. We actually scroll down to the bottom. They're both about the same book, but there's actually two different variants of ISBNs. There's a 10-digit and 13-digit variant. So we actually click on this here. What you see is we actually make the query to our servers, passing in the ISBNs. We understand that there's actually two ISBNs we pass in. They actually come back with the same result. So we actually only show one result here. We can actually click on Buy Now if we wanted to buy now, and we can log in and actually purchase it. Or if you actually click on the title, or in this case, the image, you can actually see the metadata about the book, right? So this is our About the Book page where we have reviews, related books, right, all that goodness. So let's see what exactly this extension is doing. So let's look at the background page first. So it is an extension. Need developer mode. Let's see if I can actually change some of these things so you can actually see it. Well, can you guys see that? Yes, no, a little, kind of? Okay. So we're actually doing it here. So the first thing we have up here is the book tabs. That's actually our object where we actually store the ISBNs per tab. So every single tab, we actually have two properties in there. One is ISBN, and one is actually the results. So if we've already done the results for that page, we can just get the results cached back. Otherwise, we have the list of ISBNs to actually query. This is actually our main function. It actually gets called down below with some of the listeners. What this method does is it actually sends the request. You'll see right here, there's actually a send a request call. It actually sends the request to the actual content page. The content page has that listener that's running in the content script. So we send the request to the page goes through, scrapes, gets all the ISBNs, sends it back here at this point, and then we actually store it. We don't actually make the query until it gets on the pop-up. And then here you see actually the listeners. So these are listeners that we're actually doing for each tab. So when a tab gets open, the listener gets called, calls back up to the first method that then calls into the content script. And we can find the content script by looking at, let's see here, our lovely developer tools. So as I mentioned, it gets loaded on each page, and you can actually find it there. It actually will say Chrome extension there for each of the extensions. In this case, the first thing we're doing up here is we're adding the listener. So this is the listener where the background page actually calls into it. And then what the listener then does is it calls find book. And you'll see within Find Book, there's a series of regular expressions, because it actually ends up being, there's different formatting ways that pages can actually display an ISBN. So we actually go through each of the regular expressions, pull out the ISBNs, and then that's what we actually send back to the background page. And then on the pop-up here, let's see. So the pop-up has, let's go down here. So it actually will go through initially and do a search page. So the search page will actually call the background page. You see it right here, get background page, gets the information about the current tab. And here it actually decides if there's ISBNs or if there's actually results. If it's just ISBNs, then the next thing we actually do is go back here and we get the text for the ISBN. So what you see here is the actual query that's being executed. So it's googleapis.com, books, v1, volumes, passing in that key parameter that I mentioned before. And then the query is ISBN, and then the actual ISBN. And then what happens is you take the response text. This is a simple XHR request. Takes the response text, passes it to a JSON parser, and then actually passes it into a method. And then the method, actually in this case, simply goes through and pulls out each of the identifiers, or each of the pieces of information we need. You'll see here there's actually a book ID. The JSON object is pretty self-explanatory. There's an ID for the book, there's authors, there's titles, and we'll get to some of that. So here's an example. This is pretty much what happened in the pop-up. So we have the get, and we're actually passing in the key, and there's the ISBN. So this is a little bit easier to read here. And then also each of the responses. So as I mentioned, there's the book ID. There's also the thumbnail information that we pull out, the volume information, and we'll get into kind of what's exactly in that volume information, but title, subtitle as an example. So here's the actual JSON object that can be returned for a volume query. So it actually has a bunch of identifiers in there for the book. The next big section in there is the volume info. So that's the general, again, volume metadata information we have. User information, if you authenticate, you will get the user information as well. This is what the user has stored with us. Sale information, again, if there's information relative to the price, we have that as well. And accessibility, access info, if there's access information about the book relative to the country it's in, or you're in. So volume information, so the standard stuff, again, the interesting thing here is that type, so we do have multiple types in there. So ISBN 10, 13, depending on what the exact volume is. Average rating, content version. Content version is interesting. If you're actually going to start doing a device integration, you're actually going to want to talk to us because the content versioning comes into play there. And user information. So we have the review, the page position, so that's the position where the user last left off, as well as if they purchased it or not. Sale information, so this is sale information for the book. So we're currently only in the US, so it will have the US dollar price, list price and the amount, and actually the buy link, so you can actually put that link on your page. And access information, so this tells you for the country, again, we're only in the US right now, for the EPUB, PDF downloads, as well as if it's a sample or otherwise, if it's embeddable, public domain. And the volume query, so the volume query supports multiple different types of parameters here. So you see the query, that's probably the biggest one that people will be using. There's filtering, language restrict as well. And bookshelf, so this is the actual the URL at the top there is the actual URL if you would hit our book site. You would actually have that URL there. That AS collection ID is actually the bookshelf ID. So you would replace that into your bookshelf URL query. And you can use OAuth Playground right now to go through and actually execute these queries. eBook partner integration. So this is a little bit different, right? So we've talked about the Onyx feed and the EditX feed. So the book catalog is through the Onyx feed. And then the website, the user can buy on a website and actually do an EditX transaction with us, which will actually be the order information. And then, of course, they can access the APIs for getting doing searches against our repository or the user's My Library. Here's an example of the Onyx catalog. So again, the Onyx and actually EditX have a section here that you can customize. So we've actually customized some of these parameters here. Some of them are in red. And you're going to want to talk to us at this level when you start integration. Here's EditX. Again, there's some customizable fields in here with the order information. And here's an example of kind of the actual structure of the XML for EditX. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Pratip.
Thanks, Kevin. So what I want to do is quickly walk through an example of an affiliate that's integrated with us. So the example I'm going to walk through is a social reading site called Goodreads. Have people here used Goodreads before? Is there anyone that's familiar with them? Yep, great. So a few people. It's a site that you can go to see what your friends are reading, review books, recommend books. It's really just a social reading destination. So what I want to walk through is a user perspective. When a user comes to Goodreads and they browse the site, how do they actually get referred to Google, and how does that work? So the first step is, as the user comes, they're on the Goodreads site, they browse it, they learn about what their friends are reading. And at some point, they find a book that they're interested in. And they click on the icon for the book. And this takes them to a Goodreads page that has information about the book. So it's got a description, it's got ratings, all sorts of useful information for the user. And if you look over there on the left, there's a little Google Preview button. And using our APIs, what Goodreads has done is implemented the ability for a user to come and actually read a subset of the book by clicking on that button. So what that does when the user clicks on it is a viewport opens up that lets them read a couple of % of the book, depending on what the publisher allows. They can get hooked on the book. They can figure out if they like it or not. If they get to the point where they're like, you know, I do want to buy this book, what Goodreads has done is implemented a little buy a copy button that has, among other providers, a Google eBooks logo, or I guess text in this case. And if a user clicks on this, if you think back to the affiliate integration architecture that I laid out, that user is directed to the Google Affiliate Network, who tracks that a referral came in from Goodreads, and then GAN automatically redirects them to the Google eBook store. And once they get to the Google eBook store, the user has the option of reading more about the book, seeing how much the book costs, which is obviously important. And then if they want to buy the book, they click on the Buy Now button. And then they go through the standard Google checkout process. They buy the book is pushed into the user's library. And then after that happens, Google eBooks tells GAN that this user that Goodreads sent in actually bought the book, and then there's a periodic payment that goes to Goodreads. So what Goodreads has done is they've taken a social reading destination that they've created, and they've found a way to monetize it by making money whenever one of their recommended books gets purchased as a Google eBook. So with that, I wanted to close with a few thoughts. The first is that Google eBooks offers a broad set of APIs and services that not only enable our users to read books, but allow partners to participate in the digital ebook ecosystem. So what does participate mean? For affiliates, it means they can earn money by referring customers to Google eBooks. For retailers, it means they can make money by selling Google eBooks to their customers. And for devices, it means that they can add value to their device by integrating with Google eBooks and giving their users access to rich content. If you'd like to learn more about our APIs, more detail than Kevin's gone through, please go to our code site, code.google.com/API/book. And currently, the Google eBooks affiliate program is still in a invitation-only beta, but it's going to be going live soon. And if you'd like to be notified when it goes live, you can visit that short link, goo.gl/2fm7q, and you can sign up to be notified there. And last but not least, one of our retailer partners is demoing their integration in the Google I/O sandbox. Powell's, which is a retailer in Portland, has done a great job integrating with us. They'd love to show you what they've done. They'd love to talk to you about their experience. So if you'd like to hear more about that, please stop by their booth in the Google I/O sandbox. So that's what I had. Please feel free to provide feedback using that short link, or if you've got the Android app. And we have a few minutes, so Kevin and I are happy to take any questions that you have as well. Sure, can you come up to the microphone when you ask your question, just so they can capture it?
So for the affiliate, the buyer who came to your Google Bookstore, does the affiliate get credit for that particular book or for any other book that buyers end up buying, or is there a duration for which that's effective and so on?
Yeah, so as long as they buy the book in the session that directed them to the Google eBook store, then they get credit. So what happens is when they come in from GAN, there's an affiliate ID that's attached to the Google eBook URL that they're going to. So within Google eBooks, as long as that ID is in there, we track where they came in from. Now, if they leave the site and then they come back the next day and they just go to the bookstore directly, then the affiliate won't get that credit.
So how long? So if they keep the window open, how long the session lasts?
You know, I don't know the duration of how long that session stays open. I don't imagine that there's a limit that that's unreasonable, but I'm not completely sure. But I'm happy to find out for you. If you come up afterwards, I can find out what the duration of time would be.
Also, you mostly talk about the API for affiliates and resellers. Are there API available for if you want to enhance the reading experience itself? For instance, are there already annotation service available for reading, and how is that?
So we don't have annotation services, but we do have a broad set of services available through our APIs. I don't know, Kevin, if you want to list off the kind of things that we do have.
Yes,
in
we
our
have
APIs right
we have
now.
the services for getting the metadata in terms of the volume information as well as the user's bookshelf. We don't have anything for modifying or augmenting the content at this time.
Any plan in that? And so obviously, so let's say if I develop a reader for reading eBooks in Google Books, and obviously I want to store the book in my library, but also as well as any notes, annotation I may have on the book in my library also, and that should be cloud synced, not on my local e-reader.
Yeah, that is a good idea. We're evaluating a lot of potential places to grow the product. Thanks.
Two slightly separate questions. The first, what limits do you have on the use of the API for number of books that can appear on a single bookshelf and number of full-text searches against that bookshelf? Full disclosure, I work as a librarian at a university, so
Okay.
we're interested in very large numbers.
Okay, so in terms of the actual QPS, the QPS numbers you actually sign up, when you sign up on the code site, you actually see those QPS, and you can actually request more. So there's actually a process to actually request more. We don't have anything specific in terms of differentiating between, say, a text query or querying on a user's bookshelf. And right now, I don't believe there's any limitation on how many books a user can have in their bookshelf as well.
Okay, that's one thing I like to hear. The second thing is just noting the video at the start said that people buy books and then they buy another book. It left out the part where people borrow books or lend their books after they've finished reading it to somebody else. So that raises the question, given Kindle and Nook having very limited artificial loan programs, but at least something, what sort of plans do you have for implementing those sorts of features?
So we don't have that feature right now.
Right.
No.
Okay. Do you have any plans? Or can't talk about it.
Yeah.
That's okay. I understand. All right.
Any plan to get it out of the US?
We do have plans to launch internationally this year,
When?
over
This
the
year.
course of this year.
Okay.
Kind of a techie question. I noticed that you weren't really displaying Atom and that you were defaulting to JSON. Is
That's on purpose.
that's on purpose?
Yes.
And the API is still GData-ish?
No. So it is a more of a REST API with an actual JSON response. So how I went through that object, you're actually getting a list of books back, and each of those book objects have that volume information, right? User
So
information.
it's all through the path.
Yeah. It's very much object oriented in terms of the structure. GData kind of forces you into a certain structure as opposed to just having the object.
So how does that work with the OAuth now? I didn't see an OAuth integration.
Yeah, I didn't do an example of OAuth, but you can actually go to the OAuth playground and actually, so if you authenticate and then you go through the permissions and you actually paste in the URL with your bookshelf, pass in your key as a parameter, you can actually execute it right there and it'll actually give you results.
1.0, 2.0 signed? Sorry.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm curious about the content providers and the content that Google eBooks offers. I was surprised in the book, what was the example book, Goodreads or whatever it was called, that I assumed when you had a book when you pulled it down, that content was either being published by Amazon or being published by Google, but it looked like apparently there's crossover and they can be published by multiple levels. So how do you get the content that you're providing as for e-readers?
Yeah. So the Goodreads site, actually, so the first part of your question is, why does Goodreads have so many providers listed? So they're affiliates of multiple reading services. That's what it boils down to. The second part of your question, where do we get the content that we sell? We have relationships with publishers.
Okay, so you're not looking for individual, I mean, things aren't coming from individual authors kind of thing, as in a publish on demand. Well, obviously, this is read on demand, if you will.
Yeah.
But it's all with sort of established large publishers. Is that right?
We have over 5,000 publishers right now that have made their books available, so big and small.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of Google I/O.
One more
question? I'm sorry. Would you like to ask it? Go ahead. We still have 3 minutes.
Kind of things covered?
This particular program is for eBooks, but the Google Affiliate Network offers programs for all kinds of different products.
Okay, so we need some process to register, right?
Yep. And that'll all be documented on a public website when it launches.
You can sign up on the forum to get more information later.
And currently it's not open yet, and the affiliate program is not there yet?
Right now, U.S. Right now in the U.S.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.